the Israeli and American regimes are planning for something bigger. Firstly, the United States is using its European proxies, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom, for more sanctions against Iran, and they did have more sanctions against Iran. Now, from an Iranian perspective, they're saying these sanctions are illegal. And of course, they are illegal, but you're talking about arrogant powers here. Of course, they're going to have sanctions if Uncle Sam tells them you need to have sanctions. What is this leading to? Where is this leading to? When do sanctions come? Sanctions come before war. Sanctions are an act of war. Sanctions are an illegal act against the population of any normal country, apart from country committing war crimes and genocide like Israel, which shouldn't just be under sanctions and face embargo. It should face military intervention to take down its whole establishment. But with Iran, of course, all of this hostility is because Iran simply refuses the continued interference in its own internal affairs. If you don't know about the American intervention in Iran, read about Operation Ajax. Way before the Islamic Revolution in 1979, when a democratic and secular man was in power and they came and took him down just because he wasn't following orders of the arrogant powers globally led by the United States. They don't want countries to be independent. They don't want countries to have any sovereignty. They don't want countries to have their own financial independence. They want countries to be beggars and fall under the influence of the United States empire. Iran told them no, not just with the Khamenei or Khomeini, but before them. And they don't like that. What are they preparing for? If it's not negotiations, if it's not ceasefire, if it's not de-escalation, then it's escalation, then it is war. A study or an article was published by Trita Percy. Trita Percy works for the Quincy Institute for Responsible Policy. That publication was also published in Israel, and there were resonating statements coming from Israel in relation to this, which is the second Israel-Iran war is coming, and it will be even more violent than the first. And under her analysis, she's talking about the fact that the Israeli attacks against Iran, they did not really achieve all of their objectives. Israel united the people, and instead of dividing them against the establishment in Iran, they actually came closer. Israel verified and validated the position of the Iranian establishment that we need to be powerful and we need to protect ourselves. And they also pushed Iran to have a more united front against Israel and prepare for a bigger war. They failed. This attack of Israel and the United States failed to achieve the objectives of eliminating Iran's nuclear program, take down the establishment, which was the main plan, and also affect the strategic missiles in a negative way, or take down the strategic missile capabilities. And Iran is still capable. Therefore, from an Israeli perspective, they need to have another war. According to her, Israel wants Iran to be another Syria or another Lebanon, where the Israeli terror air force will have freedom of movement and bombing without US involvement and without any sort of repercussions. As a matter of fact, the arrogant genocide minister, Israel Katz, said that we are in a new phase now anyway. Iran is now open to our attacks, and we will attack them whenever we want. We entered a new phase. Israeli opposition figures also stated that we're going to go on another campaign against Iran. And Netanyahu lost all credibility because he hasn't achieved anything in relation to Iran. Therefore, we're heading towards something bigger. The Iranian supreme leader just said that following the meeting that the Iranian president had in China and the visit that he had in China for the commemoration of the 80 years for the ending of World War II, it paved the way for huge different things that will be happening in Iran, progresses in Iran. We already saw how China supported and bolstered Iran's capabilities during the 12-day war. Of course, China would not really declare anything, but there were monitored flights of cargo coming from China during that war. And now Iran is in even better place to conduct a war with Israel. But clearly, from an Iranian perspective, they still haven't decided to take that first hit. They're also doing that for strategic reasons too, and also for their own internal reasons. If Iran goes and attacks Israel, drags a bigger war, the establishment will be viewed as the responsible side for this attack, although things changed, especially after the war was initiated by Israel, and many Iranians, including those in the opposition, wanted Iran to continue and finish the job against the parasite genocidal entity. However, even now, if Israel does conduct another attack against Iran, which is clearly only a matter of time, the Iranians will have a bigger response and with even more momentum. And in that publication that she had, there was a mention of Donald Trump. And she mentioned something interesting in relation to the position of Donald Trump and the intervention and participation in this war. She ended that by saying, by giving the green light to the opening barrage, Trump stepped into a trap that Israel had for him. That's when he participated before. And now Trump will be forced to choose between fully joining the war and staying out of the conflict. And staying out means not just a one-time refusal, but a prolonged resistance to Israeli pressure, something which he has so far neither shown the will nor the ability to do. Meaning that Donald Trump is under Benjamin Netanyahu's thumb. All of this talk, ending the war and people are starving and we were supporting, all of that is nonsense. Throwing sand in the eyes of the people who are waiting for some sort of reaction coming from Donald Trump to stop this genocide. When some of his popular support came from people who want to stop the genocide and who were against Joe Biden's approach in relation to Israel, but clearly anything to do with Israel is bigger than any US president. Donald Trump has no capacity to tell Benjamin Netanyahu no. He has no capacity to stop the aid. He has no capacity to stop the bombs or the money. He's giving him everything that he wants. And if that continues and if that persists, then he may well drag the United States, regardless of its readiness or capability or lack thereof, to Iran. That will cause massacres, by the way, to the US forces. Because do not forget, the United States withdrew from the Red Sea and made a deal with Ansarullah after multiple attacks against 4 aircraft carriers, as in the force that the United States is so proud about and boasts about 24/7 and sends to terrorize the whole world. The aircraft carriers. An army, an army on a ship that can move from one place to another and conduct attacks on any country. Ansarullah in Yemen managed to hit them and expel them. And then Trump was saying maintenance. And the administration, they're going back to the US for maintenance. Well, clearly it's maintenance. Of course it is. Especially after the huge arrogance that came from Trump initially, saying that we're not going to stop the attacks after they formed the genocide coalition with their little puppet, the UK. Unless Ansarullah and Yemen stopped the attacks against Israel, they went with their tails between their legs to negotiate with Ansarullah since the beginning. And they later realized that they are being dragged into a war of attrition that they cannot handle against a small country that is a war-torn country, by the way. If that was the performance of the United States against Yemen in the Red Sea, what is their performance against Iran going to be like? if Donald Trump decides to participate. And there's a very big chance that he would, despite resistance coming from certain figures inside of the US establishment, even the armed forces, let alone the population. He might drag the Americans for another bloodbath in West Asia. Chew them in and spit them out, by the way, like he did, or the administration did, when they sent them to Afghanistan and Iraq. 2 wars that, by the way, Trump himself was opposed to, at least in statements and words. And now he is backing the biggest genocidal war criminal on earth and also taking orders from him. So the likelihood of the United States participating is very big. And from then, it's only going to escalate. Because it will only be a matter of time up until the involvement of bigger countries is happening, especially China and Russia. China will not allow Iran to fall, especially China, but Russia too, because Russia really depends on Iran. And they have a strategic relationship with them. What happens from there? The American president, because he is controlled by a war criminal called Netanyahu, is potentially going to drag the whole world to World War III.